Welcome to our Stripe payment integration workshop. Today, we are going to be covering how to turn transactions into user credits. And for our agenda today, we're going to be covering the following items. We'll quickly go through our team introductions. We'll review the code of conduct. Then I do have a project example that I'll be sharing with all of you. It's going to be a gaming platform. We're going to install and configure the Stripe checkout extension in Xano. Then we're going to link Stripe transactions to users. Once we have done that, then we can turn transactions into user credits. In order for us to handle the expired credits, we are going to be creating a background task. And then the last piece for this project is going to be to create an API endpoint. And that way we can check how many credits each user has available to use before they purchase anything in our application. Awesome. So let's hop over to introductions. My name is Liz. I'm the developer community manager here at Xano, and I will be your host today. Also joining us in today from the Xano team, we have Michael Udinsky and Chris Coleman joining us to answer your questions in the chat. So I will pass it over to Michael to do a quick introduction.
Hey everyone, glad to see a good turnout today. So yeah, my name is Michael Udinsky. I'm the developer advocate lead here at Xano, and just excited to be a part of this workshop and interacting with you guys in chat, and can always reach me as well in the community. So welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. And Chris, I'll pass it over to you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris. I'm the head of customer success and content here at Xano. So you've probably seen me on our YouTube channel or inside of support chat. Just wanted to thank everybody for coming out, and I'm excited to help answer any questions you might have today.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. So let's go ahead and go over the example that we are going to be building the backend for today, right? And before I start building anything, I just really like to get a vision for all of the components that I am building for on the front end. So I just built this quick, it's just a slide. It's just a quick example of what our application is going to look like today. So if you can imagine that we have a game where users are required to create an account and sign in order to participate. This example is going to be like a little exploring game where users can get gadgets for their avatar. So when users click on get gadgets, they'll be routed to a page where they can purchase different gadgets with credits. However, if the user doesn't have enough credits or would like to buy more credits, they can do so by clicking on buy credits. In this example, 1 credit is 10 cents. That's what we're going to be working with. And credits are going to expire after 180 days of being purchased if they are not used. So when a user types in how many credits they want to purchase, and then they click on checkout, they will be routed to a Stripe session. And then in Stripe, they'll provide their information and pay for their credits. Then they will be routed back to the game where they can see their updated credit amounts. So that is what we are going to be building today in Xano. So for this specific project, we are not going to be starting from scratch. And we already have some existing data and tables. So I just want to show you what we currently have in our database so that you know what we are working to start off with. So in our database, we're going to have, or we already have, a user table. One thing to note here that's a little bit different than the default one is that we do have an available credits field on here. And that's going to keep track of all of the credits that are available for that specific user. We are also going to have a credit table. This table is going to keep track of all of the credits that are purchased by the user. And this table is currently empty. We are also going to have an expired credit table. That's going to keep track of all of the credits that have expired. We'll have a gadget table. This is going to contain all of the gadgets that our users can purchase. And this is already populated with different gadgets. And then we have a user gadget table. and this table keeps track of which gadgets are owned by which user. Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with building. The first thing that we are going to do is we are going to install the Stripe checkout extension from the marketplace. So let's go over to Xano here. And what we're going to take a look at here is the marketplace. So if we go into the marketplace and then go into payments, we can actually install this Stripe checkout extension. What we're going to do is install this. And then once this is installed, we're going to go ahead and follow the instructions on here. So we're going to go into our Stripe dashboard here. If you don't have an account, you will need to create one. I already have an account here, but what I'm going to do is I actually want to start fresh. So what I'm going to add a new account here. I'll just say workshop B5, just keep things simple. And I'll create this. Awesome. So now we have a fresh account. So from here, where we're going to go is our the developers section here. And you'll see this option that says API keys. What I want to do is grab this secret API key right here. So I'm going to reveal this. And then I'm going to copy this. I'll delete this later. We're going to use this to configure this extension. So we'll just add that Stripe API secret key here, and then we can update this. Awesome. So now that we have done that, we can go ahead and add products into our Stripe account, right? So what are we selling? What are you going to be selling? What kind of products are you going to be offering to your users? So for this example, we are offering credits, right? Our users can purchase different credits. So we'll go into more, and then we'll go into the product catalog. We're going to go ahead and add a product. For the name, I'm going to label this credit. It'll be a one-off purchase because every time that a user wants to purchase credits, it'll be one-off. Maybe if there's a use case where you want your users to maybe subscribe to credits, right? Maybe they get like 50 credits a month or anything like that. That would be more of like a reoccurring purchase. But for this use case, it's a one-off, and the price, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be 10 cents per credit. So now we have this credit in our catalog. If we click into this credit, we are going to find this API ID right here that we are going to use here in just a second. So this is great. Everything is looking good so far. Now let's go back to Xano. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to link a user to each of these transactions, right? So when we install the Stripe checkout extension, there is actually a database table that gets added for us. This is our session table here. And we are also going to get a folder with some API endpoints. So if we go into this Stripe checkout folder here, the main ones that we're going to be using today are going to be this post sessions API endpoint and this webhook endpoint. So this is perfect. Let's go ahead and make some changes here. Going back to our database table, let's take a look at the sessions. And as you can see here, all of these fields have been populated for us. This customer ID, this is the information that we are getting from Stripe, right? But in this case, we want to associate each of these sessions with the user that is logged into our application. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this user. I'm sorry, the customer ID field. I'm going to delete the customer ID field, and I'm going to add a table reference to our user table. And now let me move this over. Perfect. Now we can ensure that each of these sessions is associated with a user that is logged in. So let's go back to our API endpoints here. We'll go into the Stripe checkout folder, and let's check out this post sessions API endpoint. So now that we are here, we can actually run this. We can actually test this out. This is what the payload is going to look like. So we're going to have a success URL. This is the URL that our users are going to be routed to when their payment is successful. Then we have a cancel URL. That is where users are going to be routed in the case that they exit this session by clicking on the back button. And then we're also going to have these line items. These line items are going to contain a price and a quantity. So let's go ahead and add this on here. I have the payload ready to go. For the price right here, what this is taking in is actually this API ID that we can find in Stripe. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it over here. And then for the quantity, that is the information that the user is providing for us on that page, right? So if we actually go back to our slides here, for example, right, when a user is about to check out, they're going to be typing in however many credits they want. So in this case, they're typing in 100 credits, and that is the information that we are adding here. They want to purchase 100 credits. Awesome. So now we have all of this built out, right? But we are missing a small piece on here. This endpoint is currently a public endpoint. And if we want to be able to record the user that is logged in, we want to make sure that user authentication is enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and require user authentication for this. And now a user has to be logged into our gaming application in order to click on that checkout button and be able to purchase those credits. So now we have our payload. We can say in this example that Monica is logged in. We have our success URL, our cancel URL, and our line items. So let's go ahead and run this endpoint. This would be like if a user goes ahead and presses checkout. And then now we get a successful response. And within the successful response, we find this URL. This URL is where the users are going to be routed for them to check out and complete their payment on Stripe. So if we copy this and I paste it over into the browser, we can see what that looks like, right? So we had added 100 credits that we wanted to buy. We know that each of those credits is 10 cents each. So the total is $10. Now, a quick thing to note is that we wanted to keep track of these sessions, right, in our session table and associate those sessions with the user. So let's go ahead and go into our database and let's take a look at our session table. And we can see here that we actually have not added this session yet, and that is because we still have a little bit of editing to do in our API endpoint. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening here in the function stack and what we need to add. So what we need to do is add a function here. We'll add an add record function, and we're adding a record to that session state, right? And what we're going to do is disable all of these fields. I'm just going to keep the created at timestamp and the user ID, as well as the session ID. So the timestamp is going to be now. For the user ID, that's going to be the user that is logged in. So I can go ahead and select auth ID. And then for the session ID, we can find this in this object. This object was the response. This is coming from our response down here. And as you can see, we are actually mapping to this object with dot notation. So what I'm going to do for this session ID is I'm going to go ahead and grab this result down here. And I'm going to add, let's see, result. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a typo there. Let's grab that dot notation so that we can map to that ID. Perfect. Okay. So we have Stripe session.response.results. Perfect. And then adding .id so that we can map specifically to this ID right here. Awesome. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this. And let's go ahead and rerun this same session. Again, we're logged in as Smart, buying 100 credits. So now if I rerun and I go to sessions and refresh this, we can see now that a session has been created for Mark, and here is the session ID. So this is great. Now we are mapping a user to each session anytime that a new session has been created. But what happens once a user has completed the checkout process, right? That is where the webhook that we have is going to come into play. So let's go ahead and take a look at our webhook here. So for a webhook, I'm going to use an analogy. So you can imagine having two friends, maybe like Alice and Bob, and Alice has promised to immediately let Bob know whenever she bakes a batch of cookies, right? That way, Bob doesn't have to keep asking her if the cookies are ready like every second, and Bob can just go on with his day, right? So once Alice lets Bob know, like, hey, the cookies are ready, Bob can go ahead and go over to Alice's place. So this is just an analogy, right? So Bob and Alice in this example are like two applications communicating with each other. In this example, it'll be Stripe and Xano. So webhooks work. This is how webhooks work, right? It's essentially a signal or a message that one application sends to another message to inform them that something has happened. So in this case, the Stripe is going to let us know when the user has done a certain event. It's going to send a message over to Xano, and then in Xano, we can process that information. Awesome. I hope that was an okay explanation with the cookies and everything like that. I hope that made sense. But if it doesn't, please let me know. I would be happy to provide a different example or provide more resources here. Okay, so we have the webhook here in our inputs. This JSON, this is what we are receiving from the webhook. But you can also use the utility function get all inputs. So this is the information that we are receiving from Stripe, right? And what we're doing here is we're saving that information or a piece of that information into this variable, and then we are adding a record in our sessions table. Since we have already done that, we can actually go ahead and instead of doing the add record in session, we can do an add or edit record function here in our session table. What this add or edit record does, it's going to look for a record given a specific field. And if it already exists, it's going to edit that. If it doesn't exist, then it's going to add it. So in this case, we're looking for a record, and we're going to be mapping with the session ID. The cool thing about this extension is that a lot of the mapping with the dot notation has already been created for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into this add record in session function and grab a lot of this. So this session ID exists in webhook _ data.id. Let me make sure that this is all updated here. And where else do we need the session ID? Did I delete the wrong one? I might have deleted the wrong one in our sessions. No, it should exist in there. Why don't I see it? User ID, subtotal. That's interesting. Okay, let me save this. I don't know if I
maybe
use the thing here.
Maybe just remove and re-add the function, perhaps.
Let's see. Delete this and re-add it. Session. There it is. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Michael. Okay, cool. So now let's continue with adding these items on here. So we have the session ID. That's how we're going to be mapping to that. And then we have the session. Is it missing again? Is that weird? Right? There's literally this. If it's matching,
Yeah, that's weird. Give a refresh on the browser.
Yeah, let's save this and
Don't it live.
It's so interesting. I literally just did this and it worked perfectly. So of course, like when I do it live, it's missing. Okay, let's continue with like editing this and let's just see what happens. I'm just interested to see like what is going on here. So okay, so let's see. For our let's keep grabbing some of this. We'll grab the amount subtotal. Perfect. Saving all of this. Then we'll grab the amount total. Save. Grab the next one here.
Oh yeah, Liz, everyone's hyper aware today. So because you're matching on it, you don't edit the field. So see it at the top there, session ID.
I see. So this right here.
Yes.
Got it. Oh, nice. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Hyper aware today.
Perfect. Yeah, this is great. Perfect. Sweet. Okay, so payment status. Let's grab the payment status. Yeah, I'm happy that everybody is like super aware of everything because I feel like with this kind of stuff, I'm sure I'm going to make a mistake somewhere. So please call me out when I cannot find anything like this. Awesome. Okay. So I think everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and we can actually delete this function now because we don't need it anymore. All right. So now that we have done that, I am actually going to go ahead and take this endpoint URL because we need to add that into Stripe. So let's go ahead and copy this. We'll go into Stripe and then we'll go into developers. We'll go into our webhooks here and add an endpoint. We'll add that webhook endpoint URL. And then we can select the events that we want to be notified of, right? So in this case, I want to be notified of certain checkout events. You can certainly select whatever applies to your use case here. But for this case, I'm going to go ahead and select the top 3 ones. So let's go ahead and add these events. We'll add this endpoint, and then we can continue with our webhook here. Okay, awesome. Perfect. So now that we have done that, we can go ahead and we can save this and run this, right? So let's go ahead and publish this. I made this mistake so many times before where like I don't publish it and then I try to run it and then I start getting errors. So just make sure that you are publishing as you are making some of these sessions. So I do see another, yep, awesome. Yep, this right here is not the same as what we're returning. So let's go ahead and change that and save this. Okay, so now if we go into this session that we have created here, we can actually go ahead and submit a payment and we can see how it reacts over in our webhook. So I'm going to go ahead and provide an email here. And then with Stripe, if we use a combination of 4 twos, it allows us to do some testing here. So let's go ahead and fill this information out. And let's see what errors we get. So I'm going to go ahead and press pay. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. It's taking a while. And I feel like that always makes me nervous because I know something is maybe not clicking on the webhook. Okay, so we get this, we get routed to our success page, but let's go ahead and check out what happened in our webhook here. We can take a look at the request history, and it does look like we got an error here. So in our edit record, there is something that happened. So let's go ahead and debug this and check out what is going on. So where is our error? Does anybody see it? Let me check the... Oh, yes, publish. We didn't publish. I told you guys, this is something that I always mess up on. I forget to publish, and then when I run it, it gives me an error. Awesome. Thank you. I like how we're all collaborating on this. This is great. Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's try it out one more time just to make sure that that is all working properly. So let's open up that sessions API endpoint. We'll say that Monica is logged in. Let me grab the payload here. And then I do need to grab that price from the catalog, the price API ID, and add it on here. And then we'll say 50 for the quantity. Okay, so now if we run this, we get our session URL. I'm gonna click out of that one. And then let's check our session table too, because we should have one for Monica as well. So we have one for Monica here. And now let's test this out again. We'll be seeing this screen a lot today, so bear with me. 04, perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and try this out. We'll wait for this to run, and we see our success URL. And then let's go back to our webhook here and go into our request history, and we get an okay response. Awesome. Okay, so now this is great, right? We get all of this working properly. If we go to our sessions table, and let's take a look at Monica's record here, we can see that Monica had purchased, we had it set 50 for the quantity, but we can actually see here that the subtotal is 500, where it should have really been $5, right? So this is something that I noticed when using these types of webhooks. So let's take a look at the data that we're receiving from Stripe here. If we go into our data object and we map to that amount total, we can see that it's 500 instead of $5. And that is because in financial applications such as like Stripe, they use the lowest currency. So this is actually in cents rather than dollars. So in order for us to be able to get this total in dollars, we have to divide this by 100. So let's go ahead and make those edits in our add or edit record function here for the total and the subtotal. We'll add a filter and say divide by 100. Update. We'll add another one and say divide by 100. Awesome, that looks good. I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna remember to publish it. Awesome, so that should be all good and working now. So now the next step is going to be to turn our transactions into credits, right? So now we're allowing users to buy these credits. They can pay dollars for them. They get that specific credit amount. But in our backend, we need to be able to turn those transactions from Stripe to credits. Now, some things to consider here is that when we are converting these transactions into credits, we also want to add a record into our credit table, right? That's keeping track of all of the batches, all of those different transactions, and how many credits each user gets per each of those transactions. We also have a field in the user table where we are keeping track collectively of all of those credits that they have available to use for them to purchase gadgets. So You just want to make sure that as they're purchasing some of these credits, that they are being updated in their user record. Now, the place that we're going to be handling all of this logic is going to be in the webhook, because that is where we are being notified that a purchase has been made. So let's go ahead and go here into our webhook. And what we're going to do is we are going to add a record. Into our credit table, right? So we're creating a new record. The user ID, we can actually get it from this session up here. So if we map to session 1, to that variable, dot user ID, that'll give us the user that has just made the purchase. For the credits, so we know the amount, right? We know the amount total, and we can get that from this variable up here as well. So we can map to that amount by accessing the variable session1.amount total. And since each of these credits are 10 cents each, we can get the amount of credits that this user has purchased by dividing this by 10 cents. Awesome. And now for the expiration date, if you remember, we want these credits to expire 180 days after they have been purchased if they have not been used. So for this expiration date, what I'm going to select is now. And then we have this filter that we can use. It's add seconds to timestamp. And then I already did the math for this. And these are the amount of seconds that equal 180 days. Perfect. Okay, so now we can go ahead and save this. Now, the next step is to update the record in our user table. We want to update their available credits. So in order to do that, we first have to get that user record. So let's get a record from our user table. And then the ID is going to be, again, we can map with that session1 variable dot user ID. That'll give us the record of the user that is logged in. And then what we can do is we can actually edit that record. Edit record in our user table. And we can grab the user ID from this user variable right here, so we don't have to use the session1 variable anymore. And then what we are editing is the available credits. So we know how many credits that user has available from this variable up here. So we can say user1 dot available credits. And then we want to add the ones that they have just purchased, right? So we can add. And then here, we know how many credits they have purchased from this credit1 variable. So it'd be credit1 dot credit. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and publish this. And this should be all good to go. Let's go ahead and test this out and see if this works properly. So we'll go ahead and create a new session. Let's say that Monica is logged in and wants to buy 150 credits. We run this endpoint that creates a session. Let's take a look at our session table here. This is the one that just got created. Let's grab the URL. And we'll complete this payment. So then, test this out. And let's pay. This now is going to send an event over to our webhook. So we see that success page. Let's check out our webhook here. We can take a look at the request history. And we can also take a look at this session table, right? So Monica has purchased $15 worth of credits. So that looks good. That's perfect. let's go ahead, and the other thing that we're updating is that user record. So Monica should now have 150 credits. So that is all good to go. Awesome. Okay. So quickly reviewing our agenda, we have installed and configured our Stripe checkout extension. We have linked those Stripe transactions to the user that's logged in. And we have turned those transactions into credits. So now the question is, how are we going to handle the credits that are expiring, right? Because these credits expire after 180 days if they have not been used. So what we're going to do is we'll go into our tasks here. We're going to create a background task, and let's go ahead and we will name this remove expired credits. Awesome. So now we can go ahead and add the workflow here. The first thing that we want to do is we want to grab all of the records that currently exist in our credit table. So we can do that by adding a query all records from our credit table. And then we can actually add a custom query here where we are checking specifically for the records that have expired, right? So we can check the credit dot expiration dates, and we would grab all of those credits that are less than or equal to now. That'll give us everything that has expired. Now we have a list. We have an array of objects with all of those records. Now, I just want to show you really quick what that data may look like once this query runs. Right now, we don't have a lot of data in our credit table. But if we actually added something here, if we take a look at this this array here, this is kind of representing the data that we're getting back. So we have an array of objects. Each of these objects is one of those credit records. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually iterate. We're going to loop through that array. So let's do a for each loop. We're looping it through our credit one variable. And then what we're going to be doing is we want to transfer these credits to our expired credit table. So let's go ahead and add a function. We'll add a record to our expired credit. Function for the ID, we can actually get that with item dot user underscore ID. For the credits, we'll do item dot credits. And then same thing for the expiration date, item dot expiration date. So this is basically just grabbing the data at the current item that we're iterating over, and we're copying it over to that expired credit table so we can keep track of everything that has expired. Okay, so now that we have done that, then what we can actually do is we can update the user record to reflect the new amount of credits, right? So if they have credits that have expired, we also want to update that available credits field in the user table. So what we're going to do that is similar to what we previously did in our web hub. So we'll do a get record from our user table, and we're finding this user with the item user ID. So now we can get that record, and then we can edit the record in our user table. And we can actually get the ID of the user with our user wanting that ID. What we want to do is this available credits here is going to be the user one dot available. Let me make sure I'm spelling everything correctly here. Credits. This is the amount of credits that a user currently has. We're grabbing this from this get record from user function. And then we want to subtract the ones that have expired, right? So we'll do item dot credits. Perfect. Awesome. Now, the next step on here is to make sure that we're keeping that credit table clean and it doesn't have any credits that have already expired, is we want to delete that record in the credit table. So we'll go in and add a delete record from our credit table where the field value is the item.id. Awesome. So now this background task is going through. We're grabbing all of the credits that have expired from our credit table. We're iterating over those records. We're adding a copy of that of those credits into our expired credit table. We are updating the users to make sure that we're subtracting any credits that have expired. And then we are deleting the records in the credit table to keep that clean. So we can then schedule this task, right? Depending on how often you want this task to run. I'm going to select repeat. You can get as granular as 5 seconds on here. But for this use case, let's say I'm not too concerned if it goes a little bit over, if users can use their credits 5 minutes after they have expired or whatnot. So I'm actually going to go ahead and select this task to run every 5 minutes. I'm going to save this. I'm going to publish these changes, and then I'm going to enable this task. Perfect. So now we have a way of these user credits to be deleted and subtracted from the user's available credits anytime that they have expired. Now, the last thing that we need to do is create an endpoint for checking a user's available credits before processing a purchase transaction, right? But there are a couple of things that I want us to take into consideration here, right? So if a user is making different purchases of these credits, let's say somebody purchases 20 credits today and then 30 credits tomorrow, right? The ones that they have purchased today are going to expire sooner than the ones that they purchase tomorrow. So what we want to do is we want to find a way that we can use the credits that expire the soonest first, and then go down that list and use the ones that expire the latest last, right? So we want a way of handling that. Another use case that we have to solve for is if, for example, they are purchasing something that is 25 credits. We would use 20 credits from the batch that was purchased today, and then we would only need 5 credits from the batch that was purchased, that is purchased tomorrow, for example, right? And then there would still be credits left over in that batch. So we also want to make sure that we are handling that use case properly. So I'm going to walk you through everything that we're going to be doing in that scenario. And we're going to do that by building a new API endpoint. So I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'll label this app transactions. And then let's add an endpoint. We're going to start from scratch. And I'm going to label this purchase gadget. I'm going to create that as a post. And let's save this. Now, in order for a user to purchase a gadget, they do have to be logged into our application. So I'm going to go ahead and enable this user authentication here. Awesome. Now, when a user purchases a gadget, what we're going to be receiving from the front end is that gadget ID. So I'm going to go ahead and add the gadget ID as an input, and that's going to be an integer. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to get the price of the gadget. And we could find this by adding a get record from our gadget table, where the field value is the input. So now if we run this, we can see that we get all of the information for this gadget, including the price. Now, we're going to be using the price a lot in this function stack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a variable so I can save that price, and I don't have to use dot notation every time that I want to access it. I'm going to label this required credits, and that's going to be gadget 1 dot price. Perfect. So now I have that price saved. The next step to do here is before we do anything else, it's best practice for us to just check to make sure that the user has enough credits to buy this gadget. So we can check how many credits a user has by doing a get record from user function and grabbing that available credits field. So we'll do a get record from user table, whoever is logged in. So we'll do auth ID. So now from here, we know how many credits this specific user has. And if a user doesn't have any credits, we can actually stop the function stack from executing right here. And we can do that by adding a precondition. So let's go ahead and add a precondition. And then what we are checking is to make sure that the user's available credits Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm spelling everything right. And when I'm presenting live, I feel like I make so many little spelling mistakes. So we want to make sure that that is greater than or equal to the required credits, right? So that way we know that this user has enough credits to purchase this. If this is not met, then we want to go ahead and give the user an error message. And what we can say here is not enough credits to purchase gadget. Awesome. Perfect. So now what we want to do is be very intentional about what credits we use first, right? We want to use the credits that are expiring first, and then go down the list as the expiration date is increasing. So what we can do is we can grab all of those batches of credits that the user has purchased with a query all records function. Let's go here and add a query all records from our credit table. And what we're looking for is we want to know all of the credits that belong to this user. So we can add this condition here where the credits.user ID are belonging to the user that is logged in. Perfect. So now we can grab all of those badges. Another thing that we can add here to make this simple is we can sort these records. We can sort the outputs. And what we can do is we can sort these by the expiration date ascending. So this will give me all of the records that are about to expire first. So now let's go ahead and save this. And now we have a list of all of these credit records. Awesome. So now we have the price of the gadget. We know that the user has enough credits to make the purchase. We have a list of all of the batches of credits from oldest purchase to the most recent ones. Now we are going to build the logic so that we're using those old credits first, and then also taking into account if we only need to use a portion of those credits in one batch. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable here, and I'm going to label this sum with a value 0. The way that you can think about this variable that we're creating here is if you think about like a piggy bank, right? We have an empty piggy bank, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be iterating all of our different credit purchases. And if we take a look at our different credits that we have purchased, maybe you can think of each of these records as an envelope, and each envelope has a specific amount of credits inside. Now, what we want to do is we're going to be iterating through our credits and adding the the credits in each envelope to that sum until we get to a point where we have enough to buy those, to buy the gadget. So let's go ahead, and I'm actually going to add a database transaction. And if you haven't used this function before, it is awesome because this basically ensures that all of the steps that are added in here are completed successfully. And if there is an error at any point, none of those changes within there are made. So let's go ahead and save this database transaction. And what we're going to be doing here is iterating with a for each loop. We're going to be iterating over our credits array as item. On each iteration, what we're going to do is we're going to update the sum right here. We're basically grabbing those credits from the envelope, adding them into our piggy bank. So let's do an update variable. We're going to do sum, and the value is going to be sum. We can add the filter add, and what we're going to be adding is our item.credits. Perfect. So now we're grabbing those credits, adding them into our piggy bank. We also want to check if the sum is greater than or equal to the required credits, right? So every time that we iterate, we just want to take a quick pause, check to see if we have enough money in our piggy bank. So we can do that with a conditional statement here. Oops. So in this conditional statement, what we want to do is if the sum is greater than or equal to the required credits, we want to execute a piece of logic. Now, this is what we're going to be handling if there are credits, if we are over the amount of credits that are needed, right? If a batch needs to be edited, if we don't require all of those credits within that batch. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go ahead and add another conditional. And we're going to say, if the sum is greater than the required credits, this basically means that we need to edit a record. We need to edit the record in our credit table where the field value is the item.id. And we're going to edit the amount of credits that exist within that record, right? So what we're going to take is we're going to take the sum, and then we're going to subtract. We're going to subtract the required credits. This is going to give us the difference. If there's any credits left over in that batch, that's going to give us the difference. Once we have gotten to this point, that means that we were successfully able to purchase that item. We don't need to add more envelopes into our piggy bank, so we can go ahead and break the loop. Awesome. Okay. In the case that the sum is less than the required credits, then we actually want to delete that record and keep iterating, right? We want to remove that record from our credit table and keep moving on. That way we can keep grabbing money from those envelopes, those credits, and adding them into our piggy bank. So what I'm going to do here is we'll add a delete record from our credit with the item.id. Awesome. I'm actually going to move this down here. Perfect. Okay. So that looks good. That's basically handling all of that logic for us. And the next thing that we want to do, right, is if the user was able to make that purchase correctly, we just want to make sure that we are assigning that user their gadgets. So let's go ahead in our database transaction. We can add a record to our user gadget table. The user ID is going to be the user that is logged in. And then the gadget ID is going to be the ID that we're getting from the input. We also, oh, let me make sure that this is in my database transaction. Okay, perfect. Okay. We also want to make sure that we are subtracting the credits that they just used from their available credits, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to edit the record from our user table. And then this field value here, we can actually get it because we already grabbed our user record up here. So we can just say user.user1 dot available credits. And we're going to edit that to be their current available credits. Oh, sorry, this is not, I put this in the wrong place. I skipped one step ahead. So we're going to do user1.id. That's how we're going to find the record that we want to edit. And then down here is we want to do the user1.available credits. And then we're going to subtract those required credits because that was the price of the item. Let's update this and save. Okay. Whew, that was a lot. But that is the functionality that we need in order for us to continue like allowing our users to purchase these credits and updating their information as we're going through each of these steps, right? There's so many places that this information needs to be updated. So we just want to make sure that we're handling all of those use cases accordingly. Let's go ahead and test this out. Let's see if there was anywhere that we might have like made a mistake as we were building this. So I'm going to go ahead and go into let's add some fake data on here just so that we can test specifically that endpoint out. Let's go into our credit table. Monica currently has 150 credits. Let's add more records for Monica. That way we can test this out. So let's add 50. Let's say that these expire sooner than the August date. That way we can really test out that functionality where we are using the credits that expire first or the soonest. So let's say that these expire tomorrow. Let's add more credits here. Let's say that these expire on the 23rd. Okay. So now we have some data on here, and then let's also update our user table to reflect the amount of credits that Monica now has. So 50, 220 should be the new credit amount. Perfect. And then we'll also open up a new tab with our gadgets, because if this runs correctly, we'll have Monica be assigned gadgets. And let's open up our gadget table as well so that we can take a look at the price of these gadgets. Awesome. So let's run through some examples here. Let's say that Monica is logged in and Monica purchases this camera that is 60 credits. That is the ID 17. If all of this runs correctly, we should see that Monica has been assigned the camera. We should also see that Monica's available credits have decreased by 60. So I believe that would be 160 credits. And then here, we should also see that this is 90, right? Because we don't, oh, I'm sorry, nope. In this table, we should actually see that we take up these 50 credits. So this record should be gone. And then we only need 10 from here. So this will be updated to 10. And then these should be left alone because we don't need them. So the moment of truth, let's go ahead and run this. Oh, did I misspell something? Let's see where this happened. In our precondition. Oh, I did. I didn't add the underscore credits. Okay, let's save this. And let's try again. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this ran successfully. Let's go ahead and check everything out. So in our user gadget table, Monica has been assigned the camera. There should be 60 credits that have been subtracted from this. So it should be 140 or 160. Sorry, that is correct. 160. And then here, this record should be gone. And we only need 10 from this. So the record with an ID 3 should only have 10 records. Awesome. So now we have built out this functionality where all of these credits can be used from the ones that expire first to the last. You can turn your Stripe transactions into credits. So all of that functionality that we had mentioned in the slides has been built out. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to make sure to turn this into a snippet. That way I can send it out with the recording. If you want to go in here, test things out. If you think of ways that this can be improved, or maybe like make our function stack shorter, anything like that, feel free to make those changes and let us know in the community. That way we can all learn from this. It looks like this session is wrapped up a little in advance. So if anybody has any questions or any comments, feel free to take yourselves off of mute or drop them in the chat and we'll hang out.
Thank you, Liz. Awesome session. I think like one idea that I think Glenn had, which I thought was pretty good, is keeping a copy of the credits table before editing or deleting, just for auditing purposes. And I think Guillaume also mentioned he likes to add a is deleted Boolean to stuff like that. So if you do want to keep a record of those credits, those are a couple viable options to take snapshots of those.